FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
Now, one of the really interesting things, and some of you may have seen this, is that one of the signs of enormous change is that even with the military, we're in a whole new era. Military Times came out with this last week or right at the end of December. This is a poll that they've done annually. It's an online survey, and there's lots of problems with it. It has all the problems of self-selection that occur when you do an online survey, and it was just mailed out to their subscriber list of some 20,000. There's a great discussion of the poll if you go to mysterypollster.com, which, if you don't know that poll site, that website, it's Mark Blumenthal. It's a great, terrific source for sort of background on polls, and he has a great dissection of it. But as a result of the weirdnesses of the poll, it's disproportionately officers, and it's probably a little disproportionately Republicans. But even so, you can see there's just this sea change that there had been a 30 to 40 point margin of approval on the way Bush was handling Iraq that's now gone to a 7-point deficit. I was stunned by it. And I think this shows that even in one of the groups that has given this administration, their strongest backing in both political and symbolic terms, they have real trouble on their hands. Now, the military is having a reassessment of the parties, as you saw from that graph about the lines crossing on the uniformed military, and especially the officers. And there was a great piece about this in the New York Times just after the election. There was a quote from one flag officer who said, we've decided we have to be as skeptical about the Republicans as we've always been about the Democrats, which I think is so healthy. Military should be skeptical about both parties, and they should be neutral. One of the imbalances we had is that, the military didn't trust the Democrats, so the Democrats were always trying to ingratiate themselves with the military, which led to Democrats being, I think, overly deferential, as I think we were during the first couple of years in the Clinton administration on things like Bosnia. And conversely, with the Republicans, since their tie was so close, it led to the Republicans being able to, club the military, I think, into submission, as Don Rumsfeld did with, a lot of the military leaders and people like General Shinseki early on in the Gulf War. And to override too easily led to the military being too submissive and not asserting itself enough. And I think one of the great opportunities here is to redress that imbalance in civilian military affairs. But Congress has a big challenge on this. One of the questions in the Military Times survey that came out is who has, for each of these groups, do you think they have the military's best interests at heart? 63% of the military thinks senior military leadership has the military's best interests at heart. 48% President Bush, which is way lower than it used to be, but still at least a plurality, but only 23% with Congress. A 3-to-1 margin disagree and don't think the Congress has the military's best interests at heart. So, now, substantively, this means we can get heard, on very different ideas, that the public is receptive to maybe there's a better way to do our dealings in the world, and that's the dialogue that's taking place right now in Iraq and so many issues. And politically, it just means we could have a whole different dynamic going forward. It would mean that, maybe elections in the future wouldn't be defined by how our candidates look riding in a tank, or we wouldn't, instead of being attacked for being defeatocrats, maybe the other party would be on the defensive for being Republicans, that they, that you would have them being defensive for their handling of national security instead of the other way around, which would change things in a deeply pervasive way, both in Congress and out on the campaign trail.